Good afternoon. My name is Simon Leech and I work within the HPE PointNext Security Center of Excellence. And what I'm going to speak to you about for the next 12 minutes or so is the importance of DevSecOps. So a lot of companies today are moving towards DevOps as a manner of fast release for their applications into their application lifecycle, especially considering the amount of flexibility it gives from a business perspective. So to start with, I'd like to look at a definition of what DevOps actually means. So I've taken this from AWS, and DevOps is the combination of cultural philosophies, practices, and tools that increase an organization's ability to deliver applications and services at high velocity. And this is a really good summarization of what DevOps can deliver the organization, but it's really important that however you approach your DevOps methodology, you do that with security in mind. And this is really evident if you start to look at some of the business-led security concerns that DevOps introduces. Why do we do DevOps? Because it makes it really flexible and really quick to bring new applications out to market. But this very often comes at the cost of limited upfront planning, where code is very often the design. We don't have any pre-design work taking place before the coders start working. It's often very much an experimental approach, taking a fast or fail fast mentality. So kind of it doesn't matter if things go wrong, we'll just fix it in the next code release. And for that reason, there's often a very high release frequency. And one of the benefits of DevOps is the fact that you move from having maybe 3 or 4 release cycles per year into potentially 3 or 4 release cycles per week or even per day in some cases. It also means organizations are moving things towards the cloud a lot faster, and in order to support this, they're working with very small development teams. And the term a two-pizza team has kind of been coined, and what this refers to is that the group of developers working on any particular segment of a project should be able to be fed by 2 pizzas in a meeting room. So it's really important though, when you take all of this into consideration, that you leave enough pizza for the security guy as well, right? Because all of these concerns, they really have a security implication for them. The fact that limited upfront planning takes place means that very often security isn't considered from day one in the design. The fact that the code is the design means there isn't enough time to do a full threat analysis of the project definitions and the code that's coming out. The fact that it's an experimental approach and a fail-fast mentality means we know the coders are going to make mistakes, and we know some of those mistakes are going to lead to security vulnerabilities in the product. So it's really important that you understand the limitations from a security perspective, and you start to take the appropriate steps so that you can solve these security limitations right from the get-go. So when we talk with our customers about DevSecOps, we try to take them through this sort of DevSecOps transformation journey. And there are 4 areas that we'll really look at. And starting with these from left to right, the first one is security design in DevOps. So it's important to be able to build in the risk assessments and the threat modeling. So make sure that when you start to work on the project, you invite somebody from the security team to be part of that project management team so that they can start to understand the risks that DevOps is bringing along with it, or that the product that is being developed is bringing along with it, and create countermeasures to support the protection of those risks in that application. Make sure you're securing the supply chain so that you're using software and code libraries that are coming from a trusted resource and that have potentially been checked for vulnerabilities beforehand before you release them to your registry and allow them to be used as part of your code releases. And also introduce tool sets that provide you with the ability to do code review, whether you're talking about static source code analysis, dynamic source code analysis, or even real-time threat protection capabilities. And maybe start to combine these with an approach to vulnerability management and also penetration testing, so that you can start to provide active remediation capabilities as these vulnerabilities are identified and discovered. You'll also hear people talking about a shift left mentality with DevOps. And this really means taking the testing capabilities and moving those testing capabilities as close to the coders as possible. And that's just as relevant for the security personnel in the team. So make sure the security guys that are working are embedding security into the DevOps pipeline. And there's two ways of doing this. Firstly, you can do this with personnel, so making sure that somebody from security is working in your DevOps team, so that as the coders go about their job, he can be checking them, so looking over the shoulder and making sure they're not making any serious errors. Or secondly, you can be a bit more proactive and provide education and tooling capabilities to the coders themselves, so that they can fix their problems in their development pipeline. You know, developers are typically very proud people. They don't want to make mistakes, but they don't necessarily have the appropriate security education to understand the security challenges that they will be introducing into their products. Thirdly, it's about secure by default. You know, to start to look at how you can build security in to act almost as a self-service component of whatever you're doing. And this is just as relevant in terms of programming application code as well as delivering infrastructure as code or compliance as code. So whilst there are a number of security challenges from a DevOps perspective, it also gives you a lot of opportunity to make security better. So if you're working, for example, with infrastructure as code, you can introduce compliance components to that, which means as you're providing templates, whether it be for virtual machines or for containers, you can make sure that those containers or those templates have been created against the appropriate compliancy standards. What we've also seen is, though, that with DevOps, because you've got this incremental change concept, so very quick releases, very often code is only online for a short period of time, people take a sort of false sense of security from something called the honeymoon effect. And what we mean by honeymoon effect is the fact that because your code is not going to be online for very long, it's not going to give the attackers much opportunity to identify that code and identify the vulnerabilities, because before they do, there'll be a new version of that code out. But we all know, as from these sort of security incidents that we've seen, that it's not right to take this sort of false sense of security. So make sure that you do have the appropriate controls in place that do make security easy for the developers and the programmers that are developing the code. And then the final step is around continuous delivery. So as you're moving through your CI/CD pipeline, move from risk to benefit. So use security as a tool set that increases the quality of the code that you're going to be releasing into production. Think about putting security gates in place so that code can't go from stage 1 to stage 2 before it's been scanned and before it's been assessed for various vulnerabilities. And make sure that you've got security checks right to the final stage so that the code, when it does go live, is as secure as we can make it. Understanding, of course, that there will always be vulnerabilities in code that people write, and there will always be a requirement for security testing tools such as vulnerability management and penetration testing as the code and the services that are used develop and become more mature. So taking all of those 4 things into consideration gives you a good basis for this transformation journey. But it's also worth looking a little bit more detail at the security checks that can take place from a DevOps perspective. And it's all about making sure you've got the appropriate continuous feedback loops in place. So have this kind of central function of the concept of vulnerability management, which is fed through the pre-commit stages, through the continuous integration, through the acceptance of the software, and until it finally gets into production. And make sure that you're doing the appropriate checks from a threat modeling perspective, from an environmental check perspective. Make sure you're using things like source code analysis tools, whether it be static for pre-release code or dynamic for production-ready code. Look at using fuzzing, look at using pen tests, and then once the code is in development finally, use the appropriate combination of red teaming, vulnerability scanning, monitoring, penetration testing, and make sure that you've got incident response capabilities in place as well, so that if it really does go wrong and somebody does manage to break into an application, at least you know how you're going to deal with that from a longer term perspective. So hopefully that's given you a little bit of an insight into how adding security into the DevOps concept can make your organization more robust from a security perspective. And if you have any more questions or you'd like to see how you can implement this approach in your organization, HPE PointNext has developed a number of services that can help with this transformation journey. The first one of these is a DevSecOps transformation workshop, where we'll take our customers through a panel-based workshop to help them understand the potential challenges and risks and benefits of introducing DevSecOps, and create a short-term and mid-term roadmap that they can then use by going back to the business and implementing DevSecOps. Secondly, when we think about DevSecOps, we're talking very often about container implementations as well. So we have a container security planning workshop, which allows us to go much more into detail in terms of the technical challenges and technical risks that using containers introduces in an organization, and help the customer to create a high-level roadmap and turn that roadmap into a security blueprint, which will then allow us to go to stage 3, which is this concept of minimal viable secure containerization, where we can actually go and work with some of our third-party partners to integrate a secure reference architecture inside of the customer's environment. So not only do they acquire all of the hardware and software they need to set up, for example, enterprise containers as a service from HPE, but we can also provide the supporting services, both from a advisory as well as an implementation perspective, to make sure that you're up, ready and secure when you finally go into operations with a DevOps model. So with that, I'd like to thank you for listening, and have a good day.